All right, now we are live. Now it is shallow and pedantic. Before this, we were just shooting the breeze and talking about things Kieran did in hotels that we don't ever want to talk about, apparently. And I wasn't even privy to this conversation, but it already sounds epic.
Horses involved, I guarantee you.
It's fine. It's fine.
Only a couple major misdemeanors at best.
Well, I mean, that's practically nothing anymore.
A lot of alcohol, though. A lot of my 20s and early 30s involved a mass consumption that I am surprised to this day did not kill me. But sometimes you need to drink like Conan the Barbarian to have epic adventures.
So you're a real life Charles Bukowski, is what you're telling me. Kieran.
Nowhere near as erudite. Nowhere near as erudite.
I say that like Charles Bukowski doesn't actually exist. I mean, he's dead now, but...
A continuation. I mean, no. I merely follow in the drunken and erratic footsteps of my betters.
It's an excellent life vocation. So what are we talking about? This was a topic someone suggested to us, isn't it? Isn't that the case?
I believe so. This is I believe our topic is tabletop role-playing games 101.
Yeah. Yes. Who suggested that to us? Because
I think that was actually I think that might have, it was either Kieran or Xander, I thought.
Okay. Yeah, either me or my wife.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, honey, you're outed now. Can't help you.
Yeah, it is what it is. Right, because I don't remember, and I'm not going to be able to weigh in a whole lot on this because I played D&D a little in high school, and I think I tried to play RuneQuest once, and that did not go well. And you're both looking at me like you have no idea what I'm talking about, and exactly.
Yeah, RuneQuest I've heard of but never played.
Yeah, I heard of it, but I've never played it.
It had a really cool manual, but neither me or any of the guys I tried to play it with really knew what we were doing. So I tried to DM it once, and it was a hideous failure. So we never did it after that.
Oh, there's an art to writing a good D&D adventure.
Clearly, because I didn't.
So, Mike, do you want to start with your role-playing game resume before we, and then I'll continue with mine? So we got an idea of the basis of what game systems and crap we've been
in. So I thought maybe it would be useful for us to start with, just like a generic definition of like what a role-playing game is.
Always begin with ontology, yeah.
It just feels like it's, maybe a helpful primer. So I was actually hoping to find something on the OED, but they're really stingy. So I ended up going to dictionary.com instead.
Woo!
And, hey, they were open for business, and I went to them.
They always are.
They are, even on Christmas. But, so it's essentially the definition of a role-playing game, according to dictionary.com, is a game in which participants adopt the roles of imaginary characters in an adventure under the direction of a game master.
Okay.
And that, I do think, is a fairly useful definition. It's a fairly broad one.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it's characterized by you have one person that essentially runs the game, and then all of the other people that are there playing are the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what kind of system you're using, it progresses very differently from there.
Live theater with dice.
Yeah, essentially.
Like impromptu theater with dice would be
a fair amount of improv.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think pretty much every person I've ever met that was serious into and stand-up comedians as well, and I've met a few of them. All of them play role-playing games.
All right.
So
cool. So the granddaddy of them all is Dungeons and Dragons, unless I'm much mistaken. Were there any before that, or?
Interesting you should ask, actually. I was researching that subject earlier.
Oh, wow, you guys prepared.
By accident, I was actually trying to find the top Japanese role-playing game that's in Japan.
Right.
Which is Sword World or some shit like that. But, so, apparently, role-playing games in their modern form did not exist before that, but there were some indications that Jane Austen actually did these round robin, like everyone had a character that interacted. So it was more role playing and no dice and not so much combat, but would have a round robin storytelling, or they would have their own each individual character they would interact with. And actually some of that came from actual theater itself.
Okay.
Fascinating. I had no idea.
Yeah, me neither.
Neither did I, man. Neither did I. And D&D also came from wargaming, and wargaming has, as long as there's been war, goes all the way back. So
Sure.
I don't think Gygax was aware of the Jane Austen connection or that. And honestly, the role-playing role-playing aspects, he wasn't always that great on. And you can see it in some of the old D&D rules.
What you were describing that Jane Austen was doing sounds like those How to Host a Murder games.
Sort of.
And the murder mystery parties.
Murder mystery parties. My parents used to do those.
And that is a form of role-playing.
Yeah, they seem to be having fun, too.
Yeah, oh yeah. I can't remember if I've been to one of those or not. I know I've watched one on stage once, but that was a long time ago.
I got invited to one as like an engagement party for my aunt and uncle. And the materials didn't arrive until 3 weeks after the party was going to happen, and then we couldn't go anyway. And
man.
it was I totally it was not a good scene.
I recall.
Yeah.
I recall my mother and stepfather got invited to one that was set in the 1920s or something like that. 1920s seems really popular for that kind of time. I guess forensic science wasn't great in the 1920s.
Well, I think that's like that whole, Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot era, post Sherlock Holmes, where the classic detective stories are set. So that's a setting that fits. Like you wear tweed and you go to an English country manor and the butler did it. That kind of thing.
Clue, basically. That's a great movie.
Clue is a great movie, and it's a great game too.
It is.
So, basically, and even role-playing games from D&D, like it's in its 5th edition, has evolved massively.
Sure.
And any genre or fictional or non-fictional setting you want to play in, you can find a game for.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every fictional property has either a role-playing game attached to it, or someone's done a homebrew to adapt it to an existing system, or someone can be brave enough to do it their damn selves, depending on how easy the system is to use. There are a lot of role-playing game systems, some better than others.
Mm-hmm. D&D itself is full of mods and worlds and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember reading a lot of the books from when I actually
from
played.
TSR and
Not the stories themselves, but just the manuals of how the game plays. And the worlds were always really interesting. I really liked Ravenloft.
That's a cool one.
Yeah.
Just 2 weeks ago in my D&D group, we just finished The Curse of Strahd.
Right. Yeah.
And
we were talking about that when we were doing our vampire story, weren't we? Vampire episode, right?
Yeah, I think I just start, or I've been into, but we finally finished it about 2 weeks ago, and that was fairly epic.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a good setting. They actually put out a new book on the Ravenloft setting called Van Richthofen's Guide to something.
It's Mutter Handwave,
yeah, something like that. Mutter Handwave. It just came out. It's a really good setting book from what I understand. I have not read it yet, but I've seen reviews on it. It gives you a lot of crunchy, interesting background information. D&D today is very different from when I first played it at 2nd edition.
Mm-hmm.
It is... Old D&D used to be really dyed-in-wool, crunchy, hard rules, and, sometimes it's fun, and sometimes with some bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at you, Thaco.
Yeah. Oh,
and
God.
D&D 5th is far... It has rules, but the primary rule is if the rule doesn't work for your setting or your situation, or someone is abusing the rule, throw it out, overrule it. The rule is fun. That is the primary rule of D&D, which is it's a lot more open to a far more diverse crowd than it used to be. When I was first starting, to find a single female to even play D&D was like a mythic quest on its own. Now, more than half of my group I'm in is female.
Okay.
Our DM is female. So it's like you didn't used to have that. And I think some of it had to do with some of the attitudes of Gary Gygax, because he's a little bit of a misogynist. Wee tiny bit.
It's also many of the earlier systems lent themselves to power gaming and min-maxing.
Not a lot of role play.
Can we define some of these terms? Because
sure,
I've heard of min-maxing, but I have no idea what that really is.
Okay, min-maxing. You're familiar with computer RPGs, right? On game systems like Final Fantasy, shit like that.
I mean,
or Skyrim.
I've heard of them. I've never played any of those.
Min-maxing is when you use the system to maximize the effectiveness of your character. Usually it's for combat, but sometimes it can be for just all around. And if the system has like disadvantages or negative points, you take ones that barely are going to come up in the setting, so it doesn't really affect you. So you've got this uber powerful character that can do anything and everything, and you're in it for the ass whoopery. Eric did that in our Exalted game with his damn Dawncast.
It's also the kind of thing where you might it leads to having a very unbalanced character, not just in terms of statistics, but I mean if you're playing a game where you try to role play the character like you would somebody with these attributes, if you have someone who has really pumped up some of their stats and then has really low other stats, and they're just like, nope, not even going to try to raise these, not even going to try to use these. It's not really, it's kind of difficult. It's also like, it's kind of strains credulity in places. It's like, okay, so you're telling me that this guy can like basically lift a car and throw it, and you just can go into like a hardened building, but he doesn't know how to drive a car or like cook a meal. How the hell did he get so strong if he, didn't know how to, feed himself? So there's.
Okay. He has the charisma of a dump truck. How does he interact with other people?
Who did he get to feed him if he's a complete asshole? So it's like.
Okay. I gotcha.
And that's essentially min-max. And what's the other term you wanted to define there?
Power gaming, is that the same as min-maxing? What is that?
More or less.
Okay.
More or less. A power gamer is a person who typically goes for, like, you can min-max to be super social or min-max to be super combative, but you're unbalanced. Power gamer basically is optimized for combat. Like they are great in a combat situation. Their characters barely function in other ones.
Okay.
Yep. They're often also what we refer to as rules lawyers.
Oh, God.
So, you have players who will go and essentially try to exploit every little loophole in whatever the rules, book say. And they're like, well, hey, see, this is, and they'll get into it with the game master to basically justify what they're doing. And it kind of sucks all the air out of the room. It's not a lot of fun to play in a game with somebody who's a rules lawyer. Because they're usually just trying to maximize what their character can do, and they kind of don't really care about the rest of the party a lot of the time.
Yeah, that can be a blower.
So this is interesting to me because what you're describing sounds like exactly what you would want to do in any other kind of game. Like if you're playing Monopoly, you're going to use the rules to get any possible advantage that you possibly can. But that's because you're playing against everybody else at the board.
Exactly.
So it's only one person can win Monopoly.
Right.
But this is supposed to be social, because you saying it's like we've gone through 5 editions of we're on the 5th edition of D&D, and
yes,
when I think of tabletop games, I think of things like Risk.
Sure. And
Risk is basically the same game now that it always has been. Like they come up with different maps to play Risk on and slightly variations of rules, but Risk is Risk. I introduced my nephews to Risk not long ago, and it's pretty much the same game I played up with. Or, they made a few tweaks here and there to Axis and Allies or something like that.
Yeah.
But, the basic structure is the same game. So I was kind of wondering why RPGs evolve so much and more other like tabletop kind of games
Well,
don't.
I have a theory on that. And what that is tabletop role playing games tend to, like in a board game, you have a set, like even let's say chess, the most basic of board games.
Mm-hmm.
You have a movement set, a set movement set for different pieces that can do this or that.
Mm-hmm.
In role playing games, while you have abilities and limits to what your characters can or cannot do, you can choose to try to do anything. Like, you may fail, but
Okay.
you can try.
Okay.
And basically, I think that role playing games evolve their rule sets to enable that and work with that, because the inventors of the role playing games are a creative bunch, but the players are an extremely creative, exploitive, and screwy bunch. Like,
Okay.
players will pull some shit out their ass, and you're like, and you'll sit and you'll think for a minute, like, I did not think that was an idea anyone would ever come up with, and B, I am not sure how to rule that. That is really damn creative.
Okay.
I have been outthought. Damn.
Well, when you're playing a chess game, it's you versus one opponent. When you're in a chess game, you can't say, so my king decides that he's going to order, some mercenaries. And then there's this whole other board that has pieces on it that your opponent does not have any pieces on. It's like, I got rooks, I've got knights, I've got all of these other pieces over here.
Okay.
You can't do that in chess.
Your king abdicates the throne to lead an underground rebellion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So playing D&D is not like playing Risk or chess. It's more like playing Crusader Kings.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
And the role-playing aspect of it is a lot like, when you're writing a character in one of your short stories or books, how the character has a particular voice.
Yeah.
Like, it will go directions you did not expect because that's just the voice of the character. Role-playing games, your character in that is almost identical to a character you would write.
Okay.
They have their particular voice. Only the challenges that the character faces are externally stimulated by the DM. A good DM works with their players so that everyone together works to tell a cohesive, entertaining, and fun story. Everyone should be having fun in a good role-playing game.
All right.
That's a lot of the fun. It's just the creativity, the interplay. There are some DMs that are killer DMs, and their whole thing is they want to kill your character or give you challenges that, to prove their superiority over you. Those are bad DMs.
Yeah.
Those are bad DMs. The DM is not there to kill the character. The DM is there to challenge the character. Like,
Okay.
death is always a potential. Like, that is always potential. But a DM generally should not seek, or GM or whatever, should not seek to actually kill the characters outright. Unless you're playing Call of Cthulhu, and that's just an inevitable conclusion.
Well, if you
of
get to
that
the
game.
end if you get through Call of Cthulhu alive, something went wrong.
No, or you're mad. You're extremely mad.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you can be alive and unrecognizable to yourself.
That's a separate
that's
RPG from Dungeons and Dragons. All right.
Yes, that is a separate RPG, and we can touch on that a little bit later.
Okay.
And really, if you want to look at the popularity of role-playing games, I think it really kind of picked up around the late 90s, or maybe it was mid to late 90s, when White Wolf Games was formed and came out with Vampire the Masquerade.
I was wondering when Vampire the Masquerade was going to come up, because I remember that is another book that I read, although I never played it, but it seemed very interesting, and I was interested in the universe that it constructed. So much so that I do have a copy of the Book of Nod. I paid good money for that a few years ago, which is kind of just a companion piece, just like a piece of lore. But I really was fascinated by it.
Oh yeah, the lore of it is fascinating, and I mean,
it was a great setting.
Mm-hmm.
I have played in a few Vampire the Masquerade games, various types of characters that play against type. And they came up with a lot of basically monstrous settings to go with it. You had werewolves, you had mummies, you had the fae, you had ghosts. Help me out here, please, Mike.
Oh, well, there's the mages that
The
were
mages, thank you.
They were the hardest
To play.
They were actually potentially the most powerful, and they were humans. But I mean, they could screw with reality like directly. They just couldn't like it was just that nobody could actually watch them do it. That was the whole.
It couldn't be obvious. It
couldn't be obvious. There had to be a plausible explanation. Otherwise, they would basically explode.
Yeah, that is an actual thing that can happen. Basically each and every one of those played a kind of pathos or hubris or, in each setting, like, you had your werewolves raging against the destruction of the ecosystem, vampires lamenting their long and boring fucking lives, or whatever.
The loss of humanity. It was the loss of humanity. But
that is the vibe that I got from them.
Yeah. The fairy are cut off from the dreamlands and no longer can return, are stuck in this dark, fucked up human world, and blah blah blah. The mummies are fucking just mummies. I mean, I don't know what the fuck to say about that. You had Oblivion, which was like you were dead, but you were a ghost, kind of in the afterlife, but kind of not in the afterlife, and all kinds of deep, dark, fucked up shit going on there.
No. I think I've got all the books for Wraith, and I've still never played it. Like it's literally that hard. Like I don't know. It was a great setting, but like
you have to choose what keeps you locked to this world and how that affects you, and then there's your dark shadow half, and I'm like, I mean, behold, like, because being a damn vampire wasn't depressed enough. Now you're dead and depressed. I mean, and you can't take antidepressants as a fucking wraith. So I mean, there you go.
You can't. No.
So is this a different game than Vampire the Masquerade, or is this
connected? You can interact. All these settings interact with each other, are in the same game world. With and what they did early on is early books, first edition books in these settings. Each particular creature or faction saw the other creatures or factions as somehow derived from them. But they all had different origins. Like vampires came essentially from Cain, the first murderer.
Yep.
Interesting. That is very interesting, and actually a very good interpretation. I'm not going to lie. That's creative as fuck.
That's what drew me to it, because the Book of Nod is all about that, and that's why I wanted to read it and why I wanted to have a copy of it, because it's very 90s, and it just screams 90s at you from
it does.
From every page of it. But it's the that idea of Cain being a vampire is
the first
vampire from whom they all come is interesting, and it dovetails nicely into the existing biblical narrative.
Yeah.
So,
and I always find it interesting when games plug into the cultural, let's say folklore, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
And ties into various religions and or mythologies in the real world. I think it always makes it more grounded in a way and more compelling.
Yeah. That's probably what I liked about it. It's like, oh, this fits with this thing that I already have. Cool.
Yeah. Well, it was also a setting that was, the contemporary world.
Yeah.
And while there were other games that had sort of done that before, the World of Darkness, which is like the umbrella sort of world that all of these, different games actually took place in. I think it was the first one to really be like super compelling, and to really sort of gain a serious following, because you could play just a regular human with like machine guns, and like you were still like at a disadvantage against like supernatural creatures, but you would be surprised how far you could actually get with like the heavy firepower method. I did that one time in a game, and it was actually kind of it was fun.
It's like a Larry Correa novel right there.
It's very interesting. Usually,
Monster Hunter Nation.
usually when I would play Vampire, I only played it a couple of times, mostly college.
Yeah.
I played it I played it in an entirely different angle. My characters were like, well, I'm like living forever. I've got a couple of disadvantages now that make that, but only by death violent. But I have superhuman abilities, and I am going to wild the fuck out with them and have a lot of fucking fun. Mm-hmm. And which typically in the Vampire the Masquerade setting is a big no-no, because the powers that be don't want you being over the board with your vampirism,
Right, because you gotta hide, or else the humans will find out that we're there, and then they'll kill all of us. The Inquisition is always to be feared, right?
Yes, that sort of thing. But you could get away with a certain amount of wilding out within, whenever you were doing it or wherever you were doing it, because I played against type. I usually do when I'm in a game, or at least in those types of games, play against type, because here is what your race is, and here is what your character type is or clan is, and you look and think like this. I'm like, but what if I don't want to look or think like? Because you're what you are in those games is you're another your vampire parent. You are whatever the fuck they are, so they make the choice whether that fits with your personality or not. Now the reason is, typically the vampires will go and decide. But I mean, I see how normal people are with having kids. Like, oops, I thought pulling out was going to work. So I don't imagine vampires who are derived from people are much more clever. Like, oops, well, shit.
Well, you see, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah.
I wasn't consulted about this.
I'm sure it did.
I don't want to be this. So you would be an anarchist Ventru, is what you're trying to tell me.
Something like that. Though I generally just played Gangrels because they had the shape-shifting shit, and
what, are we gonna have to put rubber on your fangs? What's going on, man? You got to clear this shit with us. No.
Yeah. It's the surprising amount of blow by for vampires. Never played Werewolf. Looked interesting.
It was a fun one, and it was also just like in terms of raw combat ability, like physicality. The werewolves always
a werewolf could rip a fucking vampire in half. I mean, but
they also had a great ability where, like, if they were in their like half human, half like animal form, most people that saw that would just be like, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn around and leave now. And like they just like they would just be like, nope, didn't see anything. Nope, that really didn't happen because I can't handle it. Yeah, which was pretty cool. So
Changeling, which I did play a very long game of, which is one of the underappreciated and least played games.
What is that? I think I remember seeing that. What is that?
You play fairies. Essentially.
Oh, right. Okay.
And there's different kinds, yeah.
There are different kinds, and I was in a long game of that. We ended up going through the dreaming and all kinds of crazy shit, and I recreated the Death Star trench run down the driveway with a water balloon at the door of a mansion just as the troll was opening the door, so he got hit by a 75-mile-per-hour water balloon. That's the kind of wacky shit my character did regularly.
Okay.
Because, they're like, well, you're fanciful and creative and fey, but, you miss your... And, I've always played characters like, well, let's just make the best of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That is a trope amongst near most of my characters is, this sucks. I'm going to make the best of a bad situation.
Okay.
If there's ever any and you've gamed with me a few times, Mike, so I think you may have missed that particular trait. Well, this sucks. Let's make the best of it.
If things did not suck right now, what would I be doing? Totally trolling the neighbors. Right. Okay. Well, now we're gonna go troll the neighbors. Ding dong, ding dong, and like so.
And there's like one of the things about gaming, role-playing gaming, is that you end up having these experiences. They are fictional, they are imaginary, but they're cooperative and they're interactive, and you end up telling these stories of this crazy shit you did with these fictional versions of you many years ago. And it is some wild shit, and it can be very telling.
Yeah.
And it can be a tool, actually, to work through issues, depending on how serious or what kind of story you're trying to tell with the character, cooperating with your GM. Some people work a lot of their shit out. Me, I've just used it as a way, especially during quarantine, to keep connected to people socially and keep those social muscles exercised.
Okay.
And it's been good for me. It's been good for me because, you know, I get to crack wise, and my friends get to laugh at me cracking wise. And I guess I could go into a little bit of the game I'm in now, not the details of what our story is or whatever, because it's not particularly important at the moment because we're all on vacation in the Feywild anyway. So in it, I play a Tabaxi, which is a cat person, and he's a ranger, so think Strider. And essentially, it's based off of one of my cats, and he's a smart ass, he's petty, and he cracks wise nigh constantly. And that's just how he be. But he's really good with a bow and arrow, like fiendishly so. So that's his thing.
Okay.
That, and because like all cats, he's food insecure, so most things he kills, monsters they kill in combat, he tries to see if he can eat. Often.
Chances are it won't kill me, so down it goes. Nom, 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 nom.
We walked through a kitchen, an abandoned hut's kitchen. He rifled through it to see if he was still good to eat.
Oh, look what I brought you. Oh God. No, I don't want to eat that. Seriously? I don't see you eat anything. Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he's got survival, which lets him determine what he can and cannot eat. But, and, you know, that's just generally what I'm doing now. And that's what I did last week. And he's been a fun character who's evolved and has many traits I do not.
Sure.
Because I try to play him, like I said, after the personality of my own cat. But so that, you know, that's the game that I do. And what I get out of it, why I do it, and I guess that's really the crux of it. I mean, what it is simple enough to explain why you would do it. That's not as simple. And it goes from person to person. I do it as an expression of my creativity. Like I've done, and I know I've shown them to Mike. I don't think I've shown them to you. I've done like little like brochure type little posters of whatever campaign we're in with all of our characters and the back. Like I've done a few, just kind of like D&D campaign art, much in the same way as I do covers for the magazine.
Sure.
Same methodology, actually. It's part of how I've been, you know, working on stuff. But like, it's a good creative outlet for me because, like, it lets me come up with characters. It lets me come up with ideas. I've actually run a few games where I've done some extensive world building. I've even come up with some of my own backgrounds, like my own worlds that have got, you know, different settings, different things. A couple of them I might even publish one day, I've been saying for the past 15 to 20 years.
Publish them as what?
Role-playing game books or world books.
Okay.
But I'm not good at systems. And that's that. So that is the crux. So the pretend, essentially role-playing games is pretend with rules. So character building is one part of it. But figuring out what you can and can't do, the rules, that's the other part. And D&D is pretty simple.
Okay.
D&D is pretty simple, but you can get into some really complex worlds, like, for instance, Shadowrun. Shadowrun is very deadly.
It's a cyberpunk setting.
It's D&D cyberpunk.
Yeah, it's like, what is the current edition? What's the year in the current edition?
I think it's 2070 by this point.
Okay.
Hold up. I'm confused. Are you saying that there's a D&D mod that's cyberpunk?
No.
This is a separate.
Oh, it's a separate game. Okay, I got
it's a completely game that combines elements of D&D with cyberpunk. So you have like elves, trolls, dwarves, orcs, dragons, and magic, but cybertech and mega corporations.
All right,
it's wild.
Sweet. All right.
The magic system's a lot more complicated than D&D. That's for damn sure. playing a mage or a shaman or physical depth, and that can be complicated. The cybernetics significantly less so. But D&D is not D&D, sorry, Shadowrun can be a very complicated and lethal game because basically you're playing paid mercenaries that corporations pay to go out and retrieve an asset or cause some trouble, or sometimes they don't even tell you what they're actually sending you out to do. Like they tell you one thing, but it's for an entirely different reason.
All right.
You're a straw man in some cases.
Yep.
Which is on theme.
Yeah. I mean, there's themes of betrayal, eco-disaster, comradeship, scraping by.
So I forget. Did Cyberpunk 2020 come before Shadowrun?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, funny enough, I know now Cyberpunk 2020 was just pure cyberpunk, but similar themes. Shadowrun, I actually met and used to hang out with one of the writers of, whose name I cannot remember because it's been
that was Kevin Wu.
I thought that was Paul Hume. Oh, there you go.
Was it Paul Hume?
Paul Hume. He did the magic system.
Oh, no, that's right. Kevin Wu just showed up to that one thing. That's right.
He showed up to that one thing. And like, I remember one of the biggest honors was he invited me to play with him in Shadowrun, but like at the time, I didn't really have the ability to get around or the free time scraping by. And me and him never actually talked Shadowrun, which I think might have been a relief to him because we were all out camping and like, he just kind of noticed that like he knew that I knew who he was, but I wasn't trying to fanboy all over him because I'm like, well, he's on his fucking vacation, same as me. And he said, so what's your deal, man? Like, I'm like, oh, well, man, Steve, I'm just on vacation. So I'm drinking this homemade mead that someone else made. And I'm going to be around some campfire telling some dick jokes later. And it's going to be all good. This is my vacay, man, And he kind of gelled with that because I was just like, yeah, I know who you are, dude. But like, I respect that you're just trying to do what you're trying to do as well.
Be cool, man. Be cool.
You got to be, man. You got to be. But that's he's an interesting character. He's an interesting character, and that makes the magic system, the original magic system of Shadowrun, make a lot more sense. Like I couldn't have ever called him a friend. I think if we got to know each other better, but we were associated with each other at least. I mean, shit. Now, related to White Wolf, they came out with a system called Exalted.
Ah, yes.
Now,
what is Exalted?
Exalted is kind of like the heroic yesteryear that never was. Picture what if He-Man happened on Earth. So you've got this weird super magical science. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Weird super magical science, and it's supposedly the prequel of the World of Darkness. But they disconnected it later. But originally it was like, this was like the heroic first world yesteryear of the World of Darkness. And here's how, it was before everything fell.
Like a Hyperborean age, kind of Robert Howard vibe.
Yes,
but
very much like that.
Every player character is a practical demigod with not quite godlike powers, but you are Thor, you are Hercules, you are Perseus, you are Theseus, you are Krishna, you are He-Man. And in it, you have like different...
Why couldn't they come up with a better name than He-Man?
He-Man was actually originally supposed to be a Conan cartoon, but then they couldn't get the license. So then they had to basically scramble and come up with something, and they were like, I don't know, this dude's running around in a loincloth, he's pretty buff, like, he is a man, and they're like, fuck it, we're just going to call him He-Man. We're going to go with, like, 2 pronouns, and they're going to be, it's just going to be like, man,
Yeah, I mean, it got worse this time when you had a character named Fisto. That's very unfortunate.
Yeah, Lord God Almighty. So I'm trying to sit here now, understanding that, wondering if it would have been better if it had actually been a Conan cartoon, or whether that would have just been awful.
I don't know.
I don't know how much of that cartoon would have turned out the way it did.
Yeah.
If it had actually been a Conan cartoon, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, we'll never know. Like, if they'd gotten the license. So
in Exalted, there are similar, like you have like your werewolves and your vampires in the other World of Darkness. You have Solar Exalted, because you are exalted is when you're one of these demigods. You have Lunar Exalted, which are like they can Solar Exalted just run a gamut of all kinds of things. Like you have your priest class, you have your politician class, you have like your ninja assassin class, you have your combat class. There's one or two other your crafting class. And me and Mike were in a game run by an old friend of ours. And one of the key things about playing a Solar Exalt is that you have some kind of great terminal flaw which prevents you from achieving pure heroism, because there's something deeply fucked up about you. Because that you were the Solars were cursed to have these flaws, so they could not be these pure godlike beings. And of course, me and Mike played this to the T.
That's interesting.
We played this to the T, to the part that we broke our GM. We broke our GM.
Of course,
like,
you did.
Spare the details, but it was
You are terrible, cruddy people. I'm like, look, we are fallen gods. We try to do good, but sometimes in our pursuit of justice, we're a little hard on our nemesis. But I will point out that our nemesis typically reject social contract and are therefore no longer protected by it. So I feel okay with our actions. Plus, they were funny as fuck.
He was like, I would like to point out that this guy was a really bad person. I mean, he was a really bad person. He burned and razed all those cities. I mean,
babies.
Yes,
okay?
He met an ignoble end at our hands. Very ignoble. However, he's not Mother Teresa.
No, baby eating. Baby eating is the ultimate rejection. I feel if you eat babies, whatever happens to you after that point,
you deserve it.
I mean, maybe not if you're a dingo, but if they're babies of your same species, you just can't go baby eating. People react poorly to that.
I don't know if we should be soft on dingoes, quite frankly. I mean,
maybe not. Maybe not. You have a point there. But I'm just pointing out, even if your protagonists are drunken, whoremongering ninja and pirates, even they have moral limits of what they find acceptable.
Okay.
And eating babies is unacceptable. So
I mean, yeah, it's pretty unacceptable.
I feel you would be a poor protagonist if you just let that shit slide and be like, he was having an off day. No. So the funny part...
Now, we found his diary. It said, wake up, eat babies, kill a bunch of people, eat babies, kill some more people, eat babies. And we were like, oh, no, this guy has to go.
Yeah. Now, the funny part about all this is that we have friends in Pittsburgh that we used to hang out with. And we knew that some of them had play tested the game. But what we did not know was a good friend of ours was the line developer, the guy that invented it.
Mm.
And he heard tale of what we had done, and I think it hurt him and touched him in places he didn't want to be touched. Like, he eventually forgave us, but...
So this is why role-playing games keep evolving, is what you're telling me. Because of you and Mike.
Yeah, me and Mike. Yeah, we're why there's a second edition of Exalted. Sorry, guys.
You're single-handedly responsible.
We're kind of responsible for Exalted the Fae Folk, too. We're partially responsible for Exalted the Fae Folk.
Yeah, there was that.
1% responsible, but we influenced a little bit of that.
But I mean, like, to be serious for a minute, like, I mean, part of the reason a lot of games go through like multiple revisions is they're trying to refine the game systems.
Yeah,
and like, I'll tell you right now, 5th edition of, like, say, D&D is way easier to pick up and play. Just like, read the book for 20 minutes and you can go play this game. You may not understand how absolutely everything works, but you can play this game. With, like, 1st and 2nd edition, you needed to read the entirety of the player's handbook because you were going to be lost otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the revisions actually has less to do with the setting, but it has more to do with the rule systems and, like, all of the statistics and, accounting essentially that goes into setting up the play balance for these game worlds essentially.
Yeah, in my humble opinion, D&D 3 and 3.5 was a very positive direction that it took, because it First off, it got rid of FACO.
It got rid of what?
FACO. FACO stands for to hit armor class 0, which was a nonsensical number because the lower your armor class, the better it was, which makes no logical sense to anyone trying to play a role-playing game. You want, in your mind, you want to think that your armor score being higher is better. It just makes more numerical sense. And to hit armor class 0 made, like, it was just, you had to calculate it on a table. Modern D&D, you roll your dice, you add your to hit bonuses to it, and if you can hit the armor class, then you hit them. You don't have to look up a table, you don't have to generate some nonsense. It's just you look at it, you roll, all right, I hit them. I don't have to guess at it. I don't have to look at some table. I hit the motherfucker. You know,
Okay.
the DM doesn't have to go through a bunch of trouble either, you know.
Okay.
Very simple.
Okay.
Third also opened up all kinds of character possibilities and options.
Sure.
Then they went to fourth, and fourth they tried to simulate MMOs like Warcraft.
Well, they were also returning to the game, like the miniatures game.
Yeah.
That was what Gygax had designed and was basically selling, and that was what Dungeons and Dragons came from.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, like the first edition back in the day. And there was more of a return to having to have minis and have, sort of movement around, the board, and distancing became very important. But yeah, like Kieran said, it was actually
I remember
also
playing with
very much
miniatures
like MMOs.
when I did play.
Yeah.
I remember their miniatures being a thing.
And minis are still used to great because there's nothing like a visual map in minis. And like, I have a resin printer and a membership to a service that lets me build my own custom miniatures in it, and then download them, print them on my resin printer. And I even printed out some for some of the other characters too. That when I was running a D&D game, and mind you, like D&D 5 is so easy to play and run. I, who have never ran D&D to begin with, could just pick it up. And I think I was doing pretty decent as a GM, and I may, because both Mike and my wife are in the game, and I intend to get back to it at some point, running it. But like it's still miniature and map based. That's a very helpful visual for certain rules. But you can play it without a map or miniatures and do just as well, especially if you're doing really freeform.
Yeah, I would say the only one where you really had to have like a map and like minis for sure in order to play the game was actually 4th Ed.
Yeah.
The game was basically unplayable without those. Because it was set up, it was really like integral to just like the whole rule system. And sort of how you adjudicated gameplay. There was just no way to really do it without being able to see everything.
All right.
I mean, system-wise, D&D works pretty goddamn well. Now, an interesting thing I found out in the past couple of years, you can copyright a setting, you can copyright characters, you cannot copyright a role-playing game system.
Huh.
Yeah, that's why you have the open source role-playing game, because literally you can't you can trademark it, but you can't copyright it.
What's the difference?
Fascinating.
Yeah. God, I'd have to look it up. I honestly didn't research that part of it. But I used to know the exact difference between a trademark is something you have to run. A copyright you do once and then it lasts 80 years after your death.
Mm-hmm.
A trademark you have to re-up every so often. That's why in the case of, let's say, toys like Transformers, they have to sometimes switch the names of the characters because they let the trademark lapse, so they can't use the name anymore because someone else picked it up for their toy. It's like how no one else can use the name Superman or Batman because those are trademarked.
Right.
Not without paying licensing fees.
Right.
You can riff off of them, but like
you can make oblique references, but you can't
directly use them.
You can steal Batman from the guy who did most of the work in creating it, but pass it off as your own. But if you own the trademark, then it's fine.
We will maybe one day we'll get into the great
Bill Finger,
Bob Kane debate. Perhaps even to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. and Steve Ditko. But that, gentle readers, is a tale for another time.
Is this the part where I'm supposed to say Excelsior? Yeah, no, anyway.
Now, that's D&D. Now, like we've said, there are other systems. One of the ones I played for the longest time, and it is a broken as fuck system, is the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game.
Ah, yes.
I am both surprised and utterly not surprised that exists.
Came out in the 80s by TSR, same people that did D&D.
Yeah.
The game system's broken as fuck. Like, you can literally create anything from any power level, from the Punisher to Galactus. And when you randomly roll a character, you come up with some wacky, non-meshing shit. But it is very easy to GM. It is very easy to play. It is very easy to adapt to other settings in the superhero genre if you want to. It's just...
and your stats spelled face rip.
Yes. But... and it's a lot of fun, but it's just I can literally run a game of that with nothing but a set of dice, the universal chart, which you use to determine results, and maybe an hour's prep. I can come up with a setting. I can come up with characters. I can literally come up with nemesises and enemies and whatever off the top of my head of what would be appropriate for the players to deal with as I go. I don't even need to write this shit down. That is how easy and familiar I am with the system. I can just go through it, and it shows a little bit, but it's really easy to adapt to whatever crazy bullshit your players are going to pull. And believe me, the players are going to do some crazy fucking bullshit. Usually I am that player doing the crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of what you've been saying all night long, is Kieran, is you are that guy. That's you. You're that guy.
I mean, I've never been much into being the most powerful character because that's just fucking boring. I mean, okay, I can beat up your character. That's hardly fun. Now, if I can make your character cry, if I can make the villain cry out at night for his mama, for what has happened to him, I, as the hero, have done my job. Also, I'm just kind of a big goofball, and I find, mind you, I've gamed in serious situations where shit is dire, but I'm still going to crack wise. And
but you're always chaotic neutral, is what I hear you saying.
No, chaotic's good. Mostly good. Mostly good. I mean, I have never done a vile thing onto someone that did not do something worse.
Sure.
Usually. I mean, there was the time that I was in a campaign where you played villains, and that was a lot of fun.
Well, that's villains. That's totally different.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But in general, and it's even better if you have a game, if someone's running a game, and me and Mike are both in it together, because we play off of each other on levels. We inspire each other to greater and greater heights of ridiculousness and being ludicrous. Like, we achieve together what we could not achieve alone.
You're a dynamic duo. Yeah.
It gets silly very quickly.
Really silly, really quick.
Okay. Okay, so I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I actually do remember another game that I played back in the '90s, the early '90s. TMNT. There was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
and
role-playing game. I remember that. It was weird, and
it was the Palladium system. It was it's what's called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. I had a copy of it.
Yeah, I played that more than once. And I was never actually a mutant ninja turtle. I was always some other kind of animal.
Interesting.
I played a CIA Wetworks Wolverine.
Yeah, I did something like that. I was like a private eye or something like that. And I was called in to do a thing, and there was a thing going on. And I don't know how far we got in the campaign, because it was me and my brother and this friend of mine who introduced me to all this stuff. He was the guy who introduced me to RuneQuest as well. It's weird that we never played D&D. But and then there was a sub mod, or I don't know if mod's the right term, but there was like a post-apocalyptic thing for that set in Australia. It was very Mad Max.
After the bomb.
After the bomb, that's right.
Mutants Down Under. Then they had Mutants in Avalon. Mutants in Space. And then at some point, it crossed over with another, it used the same game system, but by the same publishing company, Palladium, a game called Rifts, which was also post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
It had super high tech, had magic, and had a fascist empire, pro-human empire, because you had all these interdimensional beings and mutants and shit in the Rifts world, and it tied in very nicely because you could play a mutant animal in Rifts because it used the same bio-E system that TMNT used.
Okay.
And I
I
played
didn't know any of this.
I played a Rift game with actually my brother's theater troupe from high school that he did theater with, of which I heard way too much of the musical version of Les Mis and Grease while hanging out with him before game.
Well,
And
that's what
now,
you get for that, Kieran. That's
now
entirely
I've
on
developed
you.
a hate of musical theater. I
That's a
have.
whole other topic.
I have. But and that game, but the TMNT, it cribbed you a lot. That was a fun game. That was a very fun game because you could play literally a hummingbird the size of a jumbo jet 747.
There was a space attachment to that as well, where there were like weird space drugs and like.
Yeah.
There was the space galactic civil war going on. Like it was,
weird.
It was wild.
You had insanity tables. TMNT was a good one.
So could you in fact actually play one of the biker mice from Mars?
Yeah.
Like, was that actually some shit you could do? Because that would be sweet.
You could.
Oh, hell yeah.
Battletoad, dude. You can play Street Shark.
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
guarantee you someone did that.
That's hilarious. That's awesome.
Make the girl be Charlie. I don't want to be Charlie.
Charlie.
You're the only girl. You have to be Charlie. I don't want to. I'll be Charlie. Damn it, Dave. You're not being Charlie.
Charlie.
And Dave really gets into it. He puts on the sundress and everything. I'm not judging.
Look, it was his time to shine, okay?
But anyway, yeah, you could play a biker
Looks
mice from Mars. You could do like any number of like whatever funny animal 80s cartoon thing. You could do a goddamn Thundercat if you wanted to.
Oh, that might be a bridge too far.
Let's not do a Thundercat.
No, let's not. But yeah, I mean, like one of the things I've always enjoyed, role-playing games for is just sort of the ability to sort of test out character concepts, or if I'm actually running a game, if I have a setting in mind for a story, or like sometimes you'll have like non-player characters, getting to actually put some of them through through their paces, or like use them and sort of bounce them off of other people. I mean, it's like it's been an interesting way to sort of do proof of concept.
Yeah.
There have been a few stories, I think, where I've sort of taken something that I tried out in an RPG originally, and then sort of adapted or took elements of it and then like incorporated it into writing. But I do think that like good role playing is storytelling.
Yeah.
So it's just it is storytelling. So I think it's a good way to just sort of do a dry run. It's a good way to to get the juices flowing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you guys are familiar with like Dragonlance, right?
Yeah.
Like the old like the fantasy novels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like they gamed like a large portion of those books. Like they actually, some of the random stuff that seems to happen in those books, that's a result of them rolling dice.
That sounds amazing.
So, yeah. So I mean,
I believe that because I was thinking, and I saw some things on Twitter for some accounts that we follow, or the Unnamed Journal Twitter account that we follow, that were talking about some D&D type stuff and looking at some things. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, if I had some D&D source books, I could come up with some good ideas for things to help me world build in some of the projects that I'm working on. that's been something I've had at the back of my mind. I haven't exactly, plunked down cash on it yet, but
Sure.
it's something I've thought about doing. I'd like to get some,
There
get some
are
source books.
there are also and actually, if you have some interest in that kind of thing, I can give you a hookup, check up with me about it after the podcast.
Sure.
Um, there are actually also some interesting websites that you can use for world building for both gaming and writing. And some of them have freemium accounts, and I can turn you on to that too.
Cool beats.
Um, but no, it is great for role playing game is great for world building. Like I can world build my ass off. The rest of the fine point of writing, I have a hard time. I know what my beginning is. I know what my ending is. I do not know how the hell I'm getting there.
Yeah.
And it's, I was going to say it's, and Kieran sort of touched on this earlier. You sort of, in a lot of role playing games, you have a setup where the characters are essentially reacting to whatever the game master is throwing at them.
Hmm.
But like for me, some of the more satisfying games I've been in is where each of the characters actually has a backstory,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
and the game master knows what the backstory is, and you kind of like have some plot threads or some story threads at least that you weave into the game
Hmm.
that makes it more compelling, more
Yeah.
like an actual novel or an actual story, so that you can find compelling character motivation. So it's those are the more satisfying games, I think, regardless of what kind of game you're playing.
Now there is a book series that is not Game of Thrones, written by George R. Martin, that is based off of a superhero game that he played in, like a campaign that he ran with his friends for years. And some of these
Is that Wild Cards?
that is Wild Cards, which has
Okay.
also had other authors in it who I cannot remember besides.
Yeah, that's
And
Wild Cards. Yeah. That's the
Wild,
series he's still working on.
yeah, but that when is he isn't.
I'm not
Wild
mad. It's
Cards-
fine. It's fine.
Wild Cards.
9 years.
Wild Cards unfortunately shows again another of
No,
his.
I saw that. I was like, yeah.
Another of his great weaknesses, in that he does not deal well. He basically tries to make the fantastic realistic, and that I guess is okay, but that really runs counter to superhero comics, like or the whole point of playing superhero. Like, yes, you have certain works of fiction, like say The Boys,
Mm-hmm.
Watchmen,
Mm-hmm.
Dark Knight Returns, but these are exceptions and not the rule. And generally, if you're role playing in a superheroic setting, the whole point is you're doing this unrealistic, fantastic shit and attempting to apply real world logic, physics, and society to it. Now, it can be a fun setting, but I feel in some way really detracts from some of the escapism that you're trying to
Well,
do.
yeah, because usually those things that you mentioned, like Watchmen, those are acts of deconstruction.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can do that in the game. You can even do that for a whole campaign. It would probably be really fun deconstructing the elements of whatever genre you're in, but not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you go to a specific type of game, you're looking for a specific type of experience, like, say, Call of Cthulhu, which we mentioned earlier, which is role playing in a world directly inspired and informed by the works of Robert Chambers, H.P. Lovecraft, that sort of thing. The mythos, as it were, the Cthulhu mythos.
Right.
And the point of those games is basically that you're trying to get through whatever your horror, your eldritch horror you're experiencing with your mind intact and alive. You're not trying to defeat them. Sometimes you can. But mostly you're just trying to get out of it with your head screwed on, right? And there are many of these campaigns where you go through characters like no one has been like. Generally, if you go into a Call of Cthulhu game, be certain to have a backup. Be certain to have several backup characters because you're gonna die.
Yeah.
You're going to need another Timmy. Yeah, no, it's yeah.
I'll get to that in a minute. Which reminds me, a little factoid about Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is the most popular Western role-playing game in Japan. Call of Cthulhu in Japan outsells all other areas of the world combined.
Of course
Like
it does.
Fascinating.
Europe, it outsells America, and it's an American game.
Of course it does.
And the demographics is primarily, at least fully half of the players of Call of Cthulhu in Japan are female.
Yeah, this was news to me.
Yeah, I just discovered this the other day. I just discovered this the other day. Because I was looking up role-playing games, which I do naturally and not even as researching for this one. Now, when I last played Call of Cthulhu, and it's been a long time, I essentially played, because there are all kind of weird-ass monsters in Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
I essentially played the Crocodile Hunter.
Now what we have here is a Shoggoth. No,
Stay still, mate. Stay still.
Stay still.
Exactly. Oh my god! Our game master was so fucking. I don't know why he was steamed. He knows what I'm like. He knew what my character. I said, I'm basically playing the Crocodile Hunter. He thought he could horrify me with the I'm so spooky in the ways of Cthulhu. No, nah, dog. No, our life experiences are very very different, and I have seen shit that will fill your pants. Don't think you can terrorize me, Thun. Life before you did.
It's a fun setting though,
It is.
I mean, like usually the focus is just more on like survival.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, because it's if basically like if your character is still alive, vaguely sane, and like some sort of like, and the firmament is intact, or like some threshold is not broken, and the world has not been invaded by like unspeakable horrors, then like you have beaten the odds.
Yeah.
Something may have gone wrong, or like your character may be the only one.
Yeah.
And everybody else is dead.
Yeah.
Also, in Call of Cthulhu, you have to do a lot of investigation and research. Like your characters do a lot of that.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, because you're basically going up against the unknown. And how do you deal with the unknown? You try to make it a little bit more known. The problem is the more known it becomes to you, the more your sanity is affected, because the more you deal with that which is outside of reality, it changes your perspective on reality. And so you are no longer quite. It's a great mechanic and a great system, and it's been ongoing for years. And
it is actually pretty compelling.
That actually sounds fun. Just listening to you guys talk about it sounds like it would be fun to play.
And they have it in multiple time settings. You can do it modern. You can do it 1920s. You can do it Victorian. There's one called Pax Cthulhu, which is Roman era Cthulhu.
Ooh, I haven't played that one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They
have that's got to be interesting. They've got Pulp Cthulhu, which is essentially pulp style adventuring in the world of H.P. Lovecraft.
Sure.
Your two-fisted Doc Simpson kind of dudes going up. So that's a little more survivable because you got weird and wacky pulp shit going on top of the Cthulhu stuff. But
that's
like
closer to Action Comics than it is.
Yeah,
that
sounds like a good mix, actually.
There is even Cyberpunk Cthulhu.
That I believe. Yeah.
And that goes down.
I don't think I want to go up against Cyber Cthulhu.
Yeah, that may be carrying Coles to Newcastle.
Well, no, what do you call it? Cthulhu ain't cyberpunk, but like the setting is. And really think of it, what would be a better thing for the stars to align in than a dystopian world?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It's funny. I remember a few years ago playing a card game for Cthulhu. Cthulhu. It was a Kickstarter, and somebody at work was a backer of it and got a copy of it, and it was a fun little game, but it wasn't. It seemed more like you were trying to bring Cthulhu into the world than trying to keep him out.
I got a similar game called Cthulhu Dice, which you start out with sandy points and a die, and you're playing a cultist, and the idea is to be the last person with sanity left in it. And I ham it up for that game because whenever I lose sanity, I make some sounds like a deep one, like I'm losing my fucking mind.
As one does, yes.
And I also got Cthulhu, the Cthulhu edition of Munchkin, which is a lot of fun as well.
Oh, right, Munchkin. I know what that is. Yeah.
My wife has a great interest in playing Call of Cthulhu. She just can't find anyone to run it. I said, honey, you don't want me running Call of Cthulhu because I can't run anything without an air of comedy in it. It's just where I'm at.
Yeah, we get you, Kieran.
It's going to be Call of Cthulhu. Cthulhu shows up with clown shoes and a giant rubber nose. I mean,
honk.
It's just gonna
the honk of Cthulhu.
It's just gonna be a thing. Oh,
I don't care which one of you talking apes is going to pay for this pizza the size of Cleveland, but one of you is going to fucking pay for this pizza the size of Cleveland. I got a call. I'm here to deliver. By God, you're going to take this pizza. You're going to eat it. But it's full of like spiders and glass. Like, I don't care. Somebody here ordered it. You're eating it.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is a, but it's a, now, like I said, I've only now, mind you. So what you get sometimes in Call of Cthulhu and with Cthulhu literature, every once in a while you get one of these dudes. He's like, "Oh, I'm so spooky because this shit doesn't scare me," and and they think that they somehow grasp the mythos so well, and that they can weave these nightmares that only your poor fragile psyche can't manage, which was the kind of game I was in. And it's like, okay, look, if it was actually unknowable, Lovecraft
wouldn't have been
able to write it because it would be unknowable. Ergo, it would be like the ravings of an acid head on paper. It would make no fucking sense.
Yeah.
It would make none. It would be a bunch of like stream of consciousness gibberish.
It's also like there are times where even in the Cthulhu related and like adjacent stories that Lovecraft wrote, there's sort of liberal use of undescribable creatures or shapes not previously seen
or non-Euclidean geometry.
Yeah, non-Euclidean geometry. And I'm like, okay, so that's cool, and that's like that gets the wheel turning, but could you like try to describe it? Like, like you're it's going in through the eye holes, yes? Like, throw me a bone here, man. Like, yeah.
It drives you mad upon seeing. I'm like, bold of you to think what will drive me mad, sir. Bold, really good Cthulhu GMs, though. They don't try to pull this air of, oh, I'm so spooky or out there or weird. They just try to involve you in like an adventure and present it as a mystery. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes less of a contest between, the game master of how can I out weird the players to the, okay, like, because good gaming, good role playing is telling a story together. It is not a conflict between the game master and the players.
I feel like we hit on that already. Yeah,
we did. And it should not be, and this might be a turning point for the conversation, a conflict between the players. Now, it's okay if it's kind of built into the backgrounds and the story.
Yeah.
But sometimes fellow players will come up with deliberately contrary backstories that is going to cause problems for everyone else. Mm-hmm. Now, this can work out sometimes if the whole point of the backstory is for them to work through this to become a better person. But there's the age-old excuse of, oh, well, that's what my character would do. Like, they do something really shitty, like someone's playing a thief and they steal from the other members of the party. Oh, well, that's what my character would do. If you have to say to the other players, that's what my character would do, you're not playing your character very well, because I should know by what you do with your character, what your character would do.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have to say that as an excuse. Like, if you steal from me and I look over your character has my shit, I should be like, oh, well, that is what their character would do.
Yeah, and my character is is a fighter and has a big shiny sword, and he has a habit of killing people who steal from him. That's what my character would do.
Right.
It's like,
roll the dice. And look, your armor class is not good, thief. What a shame.
And you don't want...
Step.
And unless it's like woven into like the story real well, you don't really like. Sometimes you get mind controlled in games. Okay, that's legit, and those can get some really good instances when you know that you're in game. It's your friend, it's your companion. Suddenly turns on everyone. You know something is wrong, and you try to get the basis of it because this is out not the way they typically behave. Just like you would if like one of your friends suddenly just like hauled off and punched you in the fucking face for no reason. The fuck even. Like out
Yeah.
of the blue.
Why? Yeah. What's happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those can lead to some very interesting stories and situations, but you don't want that shit kirking off for really no reason. Then someone is mad because uh, other people are shining. I used to game with this guy. Who I will not name because he does not even deserve the infamy of being named.
Okay.
But fuck that dude. Who would go and use game mechanics intended for you to make your antagonist trip up and fail, to make his other player characters fail so they would die, so he could get whatever dingus or device they had that he wanted, or so that he could shine. And he would also go off on these red herring tangents, chasing after shit that had nothing to do with the plot, and completely unimportant shit that like his character would go and roll and mug hobos for whatever little things the hobos had. Or go and follow random NPCs back to their homes to rob them for no reason.
Okay.
For no reason. Just like, why did you follow that random dude home to rob his shit?
I need cash. And I was like, no. Yeah.
We're making more cash on this mission. Or the greatest time, oh god, and this was so great, it made me quit playing with this group for like years. We're going on a mission, or we're getting ready to go on the mission. And his character is at a bar talking to this girl. And he starts talking about our fucking mission. Turns out she's an undercover cop. But the GM outright tells him she doesn't. You can tell she's a cop, but you figure out she's a cop, but she doesn't seem to care about your mission at all. But him strong arms her, drags her back to his van, and throws her in the back of his van with his cyber dog, so her cyber dogs would eat her. However, she's a cyber cop, kills the dog, escapes, contacts the other police, and then the police roll down on our asses. Half the party gets captured, and then I have to lead a rescue mission, rappelling down the side of a skyscraper into an apartment to fight the cops, which I do not want to do at all. In Shadowrun, you do not want to fight the cops. That brings a lot. You're a criminal, and you want nothing. You want no attention on your ass.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're better funded and better armed.
And this dude did this shit. And this was a kind of regular fucking stupid behavior he did. And for me, that was just it.
Does not play well with others.
I'm like, I can't do this no more. But that is my worst other gamer horror story. Like that is the absolute worst other player. Now I have played with some pretty bad GMs too, but I really do not want to get into that because that's just.
We sort of touched on some of this before. I mean, sort of the whole point is from any role-playing game, regardless of how adversarial the setup may be or the setting may be, it's still a collaborative story. That you're all trying to build together. And the better games, the more successful ones, the more compelling ones, and the ones that, frankly, like if you were to write the stuff down, it's going to be more compelling for other people to learn about.
Mm-hmm.
Is if you can take all of these disparate threads and sort of work on them together. If everybody knows about the backstories of all of the other characters, and the game master knows about all of these backstories and these different threads and some of the motivations of why these characters are where they are in their lives, then you're probably going to end up with a better session and a better story overall, and it's going to be a lot more fun to play too.
And if I could provide an example of good functional gaming and working well together, like I said, we just finished Curse of Strahd, and our DM, who is juggling 8 players, which is a lot to juggle, got a friend of a friend to come in and role play as the primary antagonist, Strahd.
Mm-hmm.
And
Cool.
so, that's a very confrontational role. And he did such a great job. We enjoyed his role playing and how he played Strahd, because he was kicking our ass, man. He was doing hit and run tactics on us. Like, he was playing Strahd to the hilt. He nearly fucking killed us.
Okay.
It
Wow.
was great. And so we ended up killing Strahd. And after that, like, even in the middle of this, we said, hey, man, like, we've talked about it. And after, we're done with Strahd and you're done playing Strahd, do you want to join us as a player character on our team?
Yeah.
And that's an idea of a good functional role-playing situation. Yes, our characters were all enemies, but we all got along.
Yeah. So the social dynamic of this is essential, is what you're telling me, Kieran. And if you have good people who want to play nice together, you can do amazing things. And if you have people who, for one reason or another, want to be dissonant and out of step, beyond the level of just doing amusing shenanigans, as you have testified yourself to doing, but everybody's on at least the same page. If we want to build this story together, and we're going to follow the rules to build this story together, and I'm going to have my role and you're going to have your role, but it's all going to work, even if my character that I created doesn't end up doing well. That will be part of the story that we built together.
Yeah, like a good example, I find if you're a veteran player, and we had I think 3 newbies when our group first started. What I like to do and still do on occasion, is we were in situations where, my character would have been optimized to go into the situation and start mowing shit down and doing shit tactical, because I'm really good at that. But that wouldn't have given any of our newer players who were playing like squishies, essentially, like killerics and wizards, any chance to shine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they had a chance to do their shit, because I would have ended it fairly summarily. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to stay back here and guard the entrance. You guys go ahead, and I'll make sure nothing gets your back. And that, I try to do that. I try to always encourage new players, like if they're unsure, like if they think, oh, I'm sorry, I think that's stupid. No. Did you enjoy it? No, it wasn't stupid.
Yeah.
Or it may have not been the most tactically sound thing, but you're learning. I always try to encourage new players. I always try to encourage them to play in their own way.
Yeah.
As a fellow player, that they can find their own voice, that their own style, their own comfort level, because I want it to be inclusive. I want these people to have fun with me. I want them to look back and, hey, remember when I did this amazing thing? Or I can say and look back, hey, remember when you did this amazing thing? And that kind of thing. And that's, it's a good there's the role-playing game social contract. And it's a good social contract. It's we're going to play together. We're having fun together. It's like when you were a kid and you did pretend. And the best times you pretend and played with your friends is when you all cooperated and played your roles and had fun and were a part of it together,
Yeah.
And that's really for me. Maybe when I was younger, not as much, because when I was younger, I was less confident. I was less together. I had more fears. Yeah. Today, I am more confident. I know who I am. I can be vulnerable with a character. Vulnerability doesn't scare me.
Okay.
I can do that with my characters. I don't need to be the strong character. I don't need to be any of that. I can just play something that I find interesting to play, to explore. Like, I've never tried this concept before. Let me see how this goes. I've never tried to play a character like this. This is a aspect of something that is not within me. but
Mhm.
I'm trying to see how well I can picture it without being a stereotype or lampooning something, but trying to play it authentically.
Yeah.
You know, and while I don't write very much except the occasional forward for our thing, I would imagine that if I were a regular writer, this would help me out, work out character motivations,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. And another great aspect is best some of the best antagonists in role playing games are antagonists, but not necessarily villains,
Sure.
not
Mm.
necessarily evil.
Yeah. The
There is
antagonist doesn't have to be a villain.
the
Right.
conflict
Right.
is driven by cross purposes,
Yeah.
and
That's a point I regularly make to my students when we talk about protagonists and antagonists. I ask them the question of who the antagonist is in Finding Nemo.
yeah,
The
That's a
answer
good
is
one.
Nemo.
yeah, that's true.
That's true. Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so that's cross purposes is exactly right there, Kieran. You can
But
have.
it's also a great way of in some cases of exploring worlds, fictional worlds that you're interested in that you've read. Like I've played in a couple Star Wars role playing games. I typically play Ewoks just because there's something wrong with me. Because those are evil little shits, man.
Why would you do that?
Because no one expects a ball of fury to come out of the ductwork atop of you with a vibro knife, stabbing upon your head and shoulders.
Oh man! If only somebody at Lucasfilm had played a Star Wars role-playing game at some point in the last 35 years. Imagine what could have happened.
I'm kind of waiting for like an Ewok mercenary to show up in The Mandalorian, like Hope Springs Eternal. Like that would be amazing.
I mean, if I ever get back to the game I was in before coronavirus, I was playing an Ewok space pirate. So,
Hey, space pirates are the way to go, as
yeah.
I'm given to understand.
Space pirates are Captain Harlock meets Wicket Warwick. I mean, I don't know, man. Yub yub, motherfucker. Yub
Yub,
yub.
yub.
But like, it's fun to play in established. It's fun to play in established, franchises that you've enjoyed.
Sure.
The only thing I've never seen, and it may exist, but I've never seen, is a Dune role playing game. You knew I was going to work it in somehow. That would
Yeah, I
be
don't know.
that would be more like a Stratego, or maybe like a Crusader Kings, or like
Yeah.
Empires type of game. Really,
There
Because-
have been Dune video games.
Yes.
Like I remember playing one, and there's never been a Dune mod for Crusader Kings, which I think it's just because no one's brave enough to attempt that, because it would fit. It's feudalism, but
it's space feudalism.
It's space feudalism in space. So I don't know. I think you're right, Kieran. I don't think there is a Dune role playing game.
Yeah, there's Dune board games.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't look like.
Yeah, they just came out with one.
Yeah, it's fairly recent.
Which is it's kind of weird because, I mean, you can expand on that universe because there's obviously lots of great houses, but there's Atreides and Harkonnen, and there's the Royal House, and that's what everybody knows. And the prequels added some more, but I stopped reading those because
I mean, imagine what kind of other like semi-indigenous people like the Fremen there are throughout the galaxy.
You could totally do this.
Like you could do a role-playing game in the Dune universe set on some backwards planet with some lower level house that maybe, and with like entirely different kind of weird fauna, and the only thing that really isn't in Dune is like sentient aliens. You have alien life forms, certainly, and they have found, like in the book series, they actually
that's true. They don't really do that.
Ruins, but they could never track it back to any other. Like they have found indications of once extant, but because of how far in the future that Dune is, these ruins could very well have been put by mankind and simply forgotten about.
Mike found one.
Oh my God!
He found one. He just sent it to us. And
Oh,
it seems fresh out because it's got the logo for the new movie.
oh, you
Yeah, I
dirty,
don't
Uh,
dirty
know.
boy.
yeah,
You dirty, dirty boy. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Look at
like,
all this. Look at all this.
holy shit, a $64 core rule book? They
Oh,
can,
they are banking on this, my
holy
man.
shit, Atreides Game Master Bundle, 157? Ain't nobody got time for that. All right, you know what they just guaranteed themselves? They just guaranteed themselves their asses are going to be pirated like fuck, man.
Yeah, I think this
157.
came out. It looks like I'm seeing news articles about this from a little over a year ago.
Yeah,
So I
pre-order
think this.
launching second week of December 2020. I wonder if they hit that.
I don't know.
Yeah. Like
Interesting.
this is a
Pardon me.
universe that you could totally do all sorts of expansive things with. You're exactly right, Kieran. But no one has. Even though there's Herbert and Anderson, Brian Herbert, like did that vast, extensive series of books. It's just like Star Wars. It's all centered around the same conflict, and they don't really dare expand it properly.
Yeah,
Right.
and the same thing happened, yeah, like you said, similar problem with like you said, with Star Wars, which is why a lot of the better games in that universe, you never meet any of the main characters.
You shouldn't.
No.
You're always doing some side shit for the rebellion,
Yeah,
for some shy, like it's just,
yeah.
it's always some side shit. It's always just some ridiculousness, and and that's how I think Dune would play out. Because I mean, other than to like rewrite the narrative in the books to what you thought it should be, you don't really want to be in the thick of the action. You want to be somewhere off doing some other shit that ain't got nothing to do with the kumquat Haagen Dazs and the Bene Gesserit or the whatever. You don't want no part of that nonsense. You don't want to be fucking around with no one from House Atreides, especially no one from Harkonnen. You want to be basically in the Appalachia of the galaxy, not fucking with none of that shit.
This is the same company that does the Crusader Kings board game,
I did not realize that.
which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Because how can you possibly replicate in what the video game does in a board game? What? That's
Sometimes people are dumb fucks.
well, I mean,
I mean, there's a World of Warcraft board game.
I guess some people like things like cut down into a two hour setup, but I
don't
find
know.
that very, very, very strange. Very strange.
I mean, I don't know, sir, but I will tell you that.
I always wonder with stuff like that, like who is the target, like who is the target demographic that you're trying to sell to, right? Like, because like if you're playing WoW, are you really gonna want to like log off of WoW and sit down and play the tabletop version of WoW?
I don't get
Or
that.
you could just like continue playing the game online. Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't get that. I
Yeah.
find that strange.
I mean, I find it strange too, man. Like,
I mean, I guess maybe it's for these like, oh, I have a Luddite technophobic individual of my family or a close personal friend that like refuses to use a computer, but they're really interested in this whole Warcraft business because I won't shut up about it. So now we're gonna play it
Mhm.
tabletop. Like that's like what? There's like maybe like 8 people. I don't know, but
the
it's yeah.
MMORPGs are a thing unto themselves.
What is an MMORPG? What is that?
Just one
Massive
of those.
multiplayer online role playing
Oh,
game.
like World of Warcraft.
World of
Yeah.
Warcraft.
Yeah. I don't.
I have tried. Oh God, I have tried.
No, I have not even tried. I already knew. I was like, oh no, we're not doing this.
I don't-
Yeah.
have ended up soloing in every role MMO where I have ever played in because, first off, I don't care about other people's opinions about whether I've optimized the build for my character. I built my character because this is what I find to be fun, not because of what helps your ass out.
Yeah.
It's what I enjoy. I don't care if you think I'm not optimized or I'm not up to your standards of play or da 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 da. Like I don't even do group chat when I did this. I did it once and I had to turn off I turned it off and be like, yet.
Well, that's reasonable because everyone's experience of that is because it's so massive multiplayer. Is there's almost none of that group cohesion unless
No.
it's built around people who are similar enough that they know how to work together and do things. And so if you don't fit, you're going to find yourself dealing with a lot of chaotic neutrals or hostiles to you because that's kind of the point.
It's also very different, like trying to play a game trying to play a role-playing game around a table in the same room with somebody.
Hmm.
Very different experience from
Well, yeah,
software,
but even with how I play now, which is we're not around a table, we're at our computers over Discord right now.
Sure.
Even that is still like very okay. So MMORPGs have the same problem as any computer RPG, and that is you are limited in the options that you can take or do.
Hmm.
You have codified power. You have codified ability sets that only work in a certain way and cannot work any other way or be reskinned creatively or any of that. What you have is what you have, and other people also have what you have, probably.
Sure.
And it's just, you can have some individualism, but in gameplay, you can never come up with some of the fucking plans or strategies to use your abilities in some creative fucking way if the game ain't programmed around it.
It's all Diablo 2 all the time.
Yeah.
Diablo 2.
Yeah. And that's that's the downside of MMORPGs in my mind. Now there's some people that have built relationships, communities, friendships over MMORPGs.
Hmm.
They are not me.
Does great things for some people. It's not my cup of tea.
I have been a shut-in for the past year and a half. I am not an inherently a shut-in.
Sure.
Like, I like to try to get out and do shit, which I've not been able to do much of lately, but I'm hoping to improve. I mean, I've gotten out a little bit.
Yeah.
I've gotten to see my friends more lately. That's certainly great. But like, I could never be at my computer all the time, socializing only through.
No, you want fresh air and sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want fresh air and sunshine. You otherwise you become a vampire.
Not even a good one.
Yeah.
Like a shitty one.
Yeah, you become a Nosferatu.
The old
Not
Cheeto
even that.
vampire.
Cheeto vampire. I love it.
Ooh,
I love it.
God. Mountain Dew Pyre.
Do
Oh my God. But I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I subsist only on yellow dye number 5.
Behold!
Indeed. Behold.
Behold. Okay. So, if you are, if you guys had any advice to give to a complete noob who wanted to like play a proper RPG, not an MMORPG, but
Which
if you
is
had,
valid, but
yeah, but that's not what we're talking about.
Sure.
Even though we've been talking about it for the last 5 minutes, that's fine. What would be the best way? What would be the good? How should a noob get started?
Well, the best, depending on geography and availability, if you can find a friendly local gaming store, place that
Mhm.
sells dice, role-playing game hard copies. There's actually one not too far from me and Mike.
Mhm.
Sometimes they will have space for people to run games there, and they'll have cork boards with people looking for players for that game. Or sometimes you'll meet someone like at the gaming store who's looking over a particular game that you find interesting. You might get in a conversation with them. That's one way. Another way, if you're not quite as extroverted, is to check online, because there's a number of Discord games, like a lot. There's services like Roll20.net that you can looking for group on. You can go to message boards and forums like RPG.net and literally find channels that are looking for group or looking to play.
Right.
You could definitely even find Facebook groups in the game that you want to play.
Yeah,
You
makes
just
sense.
need to. And honestly, if you're not too sure what game you want to play, type a thing you're interested in and like plus RPG in a Google search, and you will find
Yeah,
something.
that makes sense.
I mean, that is how you would go about finding someone. I mean, it's not hard, um, but you want to look out for red flags. You
Sure.
want to look out for red flags very early. You also want to, okay, like with any relationship, you want to establish the boundaries and find out what the boundaries are in whatever role playing group you join. And you want to make sure whatever group you join respects your boundaries.
Sure. Yeah.
Because sometimes the interaction groups can be abusive.
Sure.
Like any group of people can be.
Like any group of people. And you can't
Exactly.
tell that from
Yep.
the beginning. And as a noob, you're at an extreme disadvantage because you don't know if this is what the experience is supposed to be.
No.
Well, you're supposed to have fun.
Yes.
So if you meet up and you try to join a game, and it's not working for you, leave.
Quit.
Go find another group. Find other people to play with.
Yeah.
Don't power through. It's okay.
The whole point is to try to have fun and to try to tell a story. Definitely get yourself, if you go to a couple of sessions of like, a D&D game or, any game, after a couple of sessions, you're probably going to want to go and at least buy like the core rule book so that you can have some background on how the game works. Just try to be a good player, try to work with the other players. Remember that it's, a collaborative experience.
Yeah.
If the group is wrong, don't be afraid to bow out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like don't waste your time if you're not having fun. Like if you're not having fun, get out, go do something else.
Go play Parcheesi instead.
Yeah. Or, exactly. There's any number of other ways you can spend your time. Exactly. Right. So.
Anything else we want to add?
I mean, I think there's a lot that can be said about role-playing games, and I can tell you for certain that we have only scratched the surface. Like, there's my experiences, there's Mike's experiences, there's even your experiences.
Minimal as that is, yeah.
I mean, minimal, but they're there. It can be... it can be whatever experience you want it to be.
Mm-hmm. I think the multiplicity of role-playing games speaks to that.
It can be a tool. It can be a writing tool. It can be a theater tool. It can be a stand-up tool for developing your sense of, timing and wit.
Yeah.
It's also just a good way to hang out with your friends.
And it's a good way to hang out with your friends and beat the shit out of some villain who desperately needs his ass whooped because he had to have baby sushi that
yeah. Well, somebody's got to put a stop to that. But no, I mean, I've been in some pretty mediocre games, but the whole point was I was there to hang out with my friends.
Yeah,
and that was why I was there.
Yeah,
and that's great. If you're getting some social time in, even if it's not like the most memorable game or the most fun game or the whatever game, like you showed up, you hung out with your friends.
Yeah.
So
good time was had by all.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody ended up killed by a vampire.
No. You being killed by a vampire is an ignominious way to go because now you got to change your wardrobe, your lifestyle, and you have to become a fucking shit talker.
Yeah, there's so much
also,
of that.
You'll end up with 100% more Peter Murphy albums in your home.
At the very least, Joy Division, right?
Yeah. The best of Sisters of Mercy.
Love will tear us apart again.
Jesus.
We've got a lot of stuff we're doing right now.
We do.
We just polished UJ27, which has cool Space Pirates cover, and it has a cool Space Pirate story by Mike in it.
Yeah.
That was actually a game I was going to run, but never got around to.
Is
so
it
I
really?
turned it.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
is what we're talking about. This is what we're
Yep.
talking about. And look,
Yep.
I didn't finish reading it. I was just kind of scanning through the issue, making sure that everything looked right. But I like the little bit that I read, so I'm looking forward to sitting down with that, Mike. That looks awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed the first story, the Azrael story.
Yes, that was good. I like that one.
I don't know where that came to me. It's like, what if the Angel of Death was just like a really grumpy guy who was like, he would smoke like 3 packs of cigarettes a day, but he's an angel, so he can't, and he's just mad, but he's a good guy angel, so he's not going to do anything really bad, but he's going to let you know what, I don't like you. I'll be seeing you though,
And it really actually the tone of it kind of reminded me of your Drunk Vampire Hunter series. Like, it feels like it would fit right into that world.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to write a lot of first-person characters with the same kind of mood, which kind of worries me because, like, then I might not be able to differentiate them as well. But yeah, DDH is going to probably come out this coming month because I've got that one intro that I worked out where I ended up ranting about George R.R. Martin, and I kind of wrote a different version of that, so it's a little more, makes some of the same points, but is a little more polished. So that will be out soon once we finalize the cover, because I want to.
A lot less than calling George R.R. Martin a fat fuck.
It's funny because we mentioned wild cards and that was in there. It's like nobody cares about wild cards.
No.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
And your weird ass rape fantasies. Jesus, dude, dial it back.
He gets accused of that. I'm not sure if that's really what's going on or if he's just trying to be honest to what goes on in that kind of fallen world that he's created, a world that's that violent and that given to extremely hierarchical power relationships. There would be, when there's that kind of violence, there's all the kinds of violence. I mean, one kind of violence begets another kind.
You're correct, but
he does use it a lot. So
let's put it this way.
Yeah,
Gibson's shit, his cyberpunk shit, dark as fuck. Very fallen world as fuck. I do not recall it ever being a plot point or anything except maybe obliquely referenced in a character's background.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And plenty of other people that write post-apocalyptic shit.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just started picking up or I just read a novel in a pulp post-apocalyptic thing. Did you ever read any Deathlands?
I've heard of it,
but I haven't read it.
I just picked one up. It was, again, somebody on Twitter recommended it, and it's extremely pulpy. It's very 80s and 90s. Like, this guy wrote these things for like decades.
All right.
But it's great. Like, the one I think is like there's a zombie story in it, and it's post-apocalyptic, and there's zombies, and on top of that, he takes this plot and puts it into a Yojimbo scenario where he's got like two factions in a town and we've got to like bring them together to fight the zombies. It was really good. It's a pot boiler, but it's pulpy, but I really found myself enjoying it in terms of like building that plot, and the characters are all kind of like, and I mentioned that because there's like a subtext of horniness running through it. But again, just as you said, Karen, there's no overt sexual assault. Everything's very consensual. So I concede your point. George R.R. Martin has something wrong with him. Let's just leave it at that. So, yeah, Drunk Vampire Hunter is probably going to come out this month. We've got UJ27, and then there are some other things. I want to say there's something else popping in the back of my head.
There was the singles collection.
Yeah, that popped. That's been out, but I put it on Amazon. Exciting things are happening for what we're up to right now. So, should we put a pin in this, boys?
Yeah, I think
we
so.
should.
All
I think
right,
we should.
this has been UJ15, a series of long discussions about role-playing games, and I learned a lot. So thanks for that, guys. I honestly did. I haven't touched a role-playing game since the '90s, so this has been good. So we are shallow, we are pedantic. I am Andrew.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Kieran.
Thank y'all for stopping by.